Many issues involve U.S.-Canada relationships that it's like shooting your sibling in the heart. I can't believe we're doing what we're doing.
Tariffs are tools. But in today's trade war, they've become something more. Symbols of disruption, wielded personally by Donald Trump. This latest escalation didn't come from Beijing or Brasilia. It came from Washington. And it wasn't aimed at rivals, but at Canada. For decades, the United States and Canada weren't just trading partners. They were collaborators in manufacturing, in defense, in shaping the global economy. Now, that foundation is cracking. And for the first time, the pushback is coming not just from Ottawa, but from Washington insiders themselves. Carla Hills, who once led America's NAFTA negotiations, is sounding the alarm. Not with politics, but with history. Because what's happening now isn't just a trade dispute. It's a breakdown, triggered by Trump, but felt across borders.
You make of Trump issuing this tariff threat in the middle of trade talks? Things look to be going in the right direction. It seems like there was some positive signals being sent. Now he's just dumped this on us.
Trump's tariff-first approach has left allies scrambling. And among those most concerned are the very people who once helped build the North American trading system. Carla Hills, former U.S. trade representative, isn't known for dramatic language, but even she has called the situation a self-inflicted wound, comparing it to turning on your own sibling. For her, the damage isn't abstract, it's operational. Cross-border supply chains, especially in autos and manufacturing, rely on predictability. Trump's surprise escalations are replacing that with chaos. Planning has become guesswork. From small businesses in Michigan to parts manufacturers in Ontario, firms are holding back on hiring, investing, and signing long-term contracts. And the economic toll is measurable. A Yale study in July 2025 projected the disruption could cut Canada's GDP by 2.1% and cost American households over $2,500 annually due to inflation. Trump promised control. What businesses got was confusion.
What I wanted to emphasize today is, as Minister in charge of industries and of the economy, is we are not alone in this world. We need to be closer to our allies.
Instead of reacting emotionally, Canada is shifting strategically and sending a message that it won't wait for Trump's mood to change. Just weeks before the latest escalation, Prime Minister Carney signed a new agreement with the European Union. More than a trade deal, it includes coordination on industrial policy, defense, and strategic industries. This wasn't a press stunt, it was a pivot. And while Carney keeps negotiations private, Industry Minister Melanie Joly has taken the lead in economic diplomacy. Her approach is quiet but pointed. Canada is protecting jobs not through retaliation, but through realignment. Under CETA, trade with the EU continues to expand. And Joly is working to accelerate full ratification across Europe, even as 10 member states have yet to finalize the agreement. Her message is simple. Trump may be closing doors, but Canada is opening others. The longer Trump leans into unpredictability, the more Canada leans out. What began as a dispute is fast becoming a divorce. Ottawa is meeting with Berlin, Brussels, and Paris, building alternative supply chains and co-investment pathways that exclude the U.S. And the U.S. isn't just losing trade, it's losing credibility. Veteran negotiators like Hills have warned that leadership is about consistency, but Trump's tariff policy has been anything but. And with each new escalation, that inconsistency drives partners further away. Canada isn't just adjusting, it's repositioning structurally and strategically for a post-Trump economic landscape. Trade is more than numbers, it's trust. And once that trust is broken, through chaos, threats, or shifting rules, rebuilding it isn't simple. Trump may see tariffs as leverage, but his former allies now see them as warnings. Canada is adapting, Europe is welcoming. And if this trend holds, Trump's greatest legacy may not be manufacturing revival, but the fragmentation of a continent-spanning alliance.
We're going to start sending letters out to various countries starting tomorrow, and they'll range in value from maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariffs.
On July 4th, while Americans celebrated their independence with fireworks and parades, President Donald Trump took a different approach. From the East Room of the White House, he launched the next phase of his global trade campaign, announcing that letters would be sent to countries around the world, laying out new U.S. tariff rates ranging from 10% all the way up to 70%. These tariffs, he said, would go into effect on August 1st. The message was clear: sign a deal or face the cost. With agreements already reached with Vietnam and the United Kingdom, Trump felt vindicated. But one country, just across the northern border, remains locked in an unusually tense standoff: Canada. And unlike the others this time, Trump's strategy may hit a wall.
Trump says he plans to spend part of his 4th of July holiday sending letters to countries notifying them of their new tariff rates.
We have a lot of great things going, and we're getting along with countries, but some will be disappointed because they're going to have to pay tariff.
Trump's 90 deals in 90 days campaign has picked up pace. The UK locked in a mini deal. Vietnam accepted a revised tariff schedule. According to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, around 100 countries could qualify for a 10% base rate if they reach terms fast. But Canada is taking a different approach. Rather than rushing into a deal, Ottawa has reopened negotiations carefully, and only after withdrawing its digital services tax to get back to the table. Even so, no agreement has been announced. What's different this time is that Canada, unlike others, seems willing to push back.
Americans are celebrating their country's past and present today on Independence Day, while Canadians are expressing concerns about what the future could hold for the Canada-U.S. relationship.
For months, trade talks between the U.S. and Canada had stalled. In late June, Trump abruptly walked away from the table after Canada moved ahead with its digital services tax, a 3% levy targeting U.S. tech giants. Days later, under pressure, Prime Minister Mark Carney repealed the tax to reopen negotiations. But the concessions stopped there. Unlike other nations, Canada hasn't rushed to finalize a new deal. Instead, it has taken a quieter, slower approach, reopening discussions but refusing to give in to every demand. That includes Trump's likely next target, Canada's dairy sector. Canada's supply management system, which uses quotas and tariffs to protect domestic milk producers, has long been a sore point for Trump. But for Canadian policymakers, it's a non-negotiable pillar of economic sovereignty. Reforms would require political capital, cross-provincial consensus, and potentially an act of parliament. Though dairy was not officially raised, the idea of including it in the talks has triggered political backlash in Canada. And so far, Carney has not signaled any willingness to make concessions. This resistance is more than symbolic. If no agreement is reached by the July 21st deadline, Canada could face tariffs as high as 70% on its steel, aluminum, and auto exports, sectors deeply integrated into U.S. supply chains. The risk here is mutual. According to Statistics Canada, over 75% of Canadian automotive exports, roughly 80 billion Canadian dollars per year, go directly to the United States. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturers rely heavily on Canadian inputs, especially in the Great Lakes region. Trump's escalating tactics may spark retaliation, not just diplomatically, but economically. If the U.S. imposes sweeping tariffs on Canada, it could disrupt cross-border supply chains, increase prices for U.S. consumers, and trigger political blowback in Midwestern states.
I think the reality is we're dealing with a president who is incredibly abnormal and not something we're used to.
Trump's tariff-first strategy has delivered quick deals in some cases. But with Canada, the calculus is different. This is not a developing economy adjusting its terms to avoid disruption. It's a G7 ally, with the economic weight and political structure to absorb short-term pressure. By pushing too hard, Trump may risk breaking a relationship that has long benefited both nations. A deal is still possible. But if the U.S. insists on unconditional surrender, Canada may choose to walk. And if that happens, July 21st won't just mark a failed negotiation. It could mark the beginning of something far more costly, the unraveling of North America's most vital trade alliance.
We denounce these illegal tariffs. and we think that they're a direct attack against our workers and now on the in the copper industry, and so we'll fight against them.
At first, Canada waited, but now it has broken its silence. Industry Minister Melanie Joly publicly denounced the measure, calling it illegal under international trade rules and a direct attack on Canadian workers. Behind the scenes, Joly has been meeting with executives from major mining firms like Glencore and Teck Resources, as well as union leaders. Canada is no longer in observation mode. It is preparing to respond. And this moment is about more than copper. It's about whether rules still matter in the world's most important trading relationship.
So Glencore and them, those are Canadian companies that both mine copper. A tariff to this critical mineral would be a blow to Canada.
The anger is rooted not just in economics, but in disruption. Canada exports a significant volume of copper to the US, and for regions like Quebec, that trade is tightly linked to jobs and production. Even provinces that sell more to Asia are now caught in a cycle of volatility. For producers, it's no longer about adjusting to new policies. It's about navigating a climate where long-term planning is nearly impossible, and where every morning could bring another shock. For the Trump administration, disruption is the point. The copper tariff, like the steel and aluminum tariffs before it, is being imposed under Section 232 of the U.S. Trade Expansion Act, on the grounds of national security. But few believe copper from Canada threatens U.S. security. In fact, many experts say the real target is China, the world's largest supplier of refined copper. By hitting all exporters equally, the U.S. creates a broad web of pressure. The goal is simple: force countries to sign new bilateral trade agreements, or risk being left out entirely. This tactic now has a name in Washington: Liberation Day tariffs. Over 20 countries have received letters warning them of impending duties. Even allies like Japan and South Korea weren't spared. Canada was, for a time, left off the list. But with the copper tariff now confirmed, it's clear: no one is fully safe. And for Canada, this tariff lands in the middle of a fragile negotiation.
The idea here for Canada is just to get back to respect for the trade agreement that President Trump himself negotiated, in his first term.
As the U.S. pushes forward, Canada is shifting from patience to preparation. Ottawa's approach has not been loud, but it has been deliberate. Over the past 2 weeks, Canada has ramped up internal consultations across ministries, provinces, and industries, especially in regions like Quebec and Ontario, where the impact could be immediate. Minister Joly's meetings with Glencore and Teck Resources weren't symbolic. They were the start of response planning. And that planning now comes with a clear timeline. Canada has tied its response to July 21st, giving both sides less than 2 weeks to find a resolution. If no agreement is reached by then, retaliation is firmly on the table. Steel tariffs are among the options, ones Canada has used before and is prepared to use again. Behind the scenes, the message is clear: if diplomacy stalls, countermeasures won't. This is not just a story about copper. It's a story about trust and how easily it can be broken. Trump may see tariffs as tools of leverage, but allies see them as weapons used without warning. And that shift, from partner to target, could have long-term consequences. Canada isn't folding, but it also isn't escalating yet. What happens in the next 10 days could decide whether North America remains a free trade zone or falls deeper into a spiral of tit-for-tat protectionism. And in this moment, the question isn't just whether Canada will fight back, it's whether the rules that built the global trade system can survive another round of shock.